Good evening. Welcome to the October 21st City Council meeting. I'm Gina Louise Shara. I'm the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. We will begin with public comment, as we always do. Then after public comment, we'll convene the meeting. I'm just going to ask if there's anyone here for public comment before I do the whole preamble that I have to save us some time. If there's no one here for public comment, if you would like to participate in public comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature down under reactions. I'm looking for hands. We do have a public hearing coming up, which is different than public comment. So, but if you're here for general public comment, please let me know. I am not seeing any raised hands. You also, if you're having trouble, oh,
I think so.
Hold on. Clerk Powers, are you here for public comment?
I'm here for public comment, but I don't need the information about what the rules are, if that's helpful.
Okay. Sure, go ahead. 3 minutes. It's your time.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And I don't know if I could start my video here. I just wanted to remind everybody, this is the last city council meeting before the November 2nd election. And I just wanted to remind everybody to go to their polling location on election day to cast their vote. If anyone is interested in early voting, we are starting that on Saturday, October 23rd. It will be held at the Senior Center, and this is for all wards and precincts. So regardless of which ward or precinct you live in, you will be able to early vote at the Northampton Senior Center starting on October 23rd. On Saturday, it's going to be from 8:30 to 1:30. On Sunday, it will be from 1 to 6. And all next week, Monday through Friday, early voting will take place from 8:30 to 4:30. So that's it. I look forward to seeing everybody at the polls.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else here for public comment? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to just, oh, what's happening, Counselor? Oh, okay, I see a lot of hands. What's happening? Counselor Quinlan, Counselor Foster?
I saw Carol Owen raising her hand physically.
Oh.
I didn't know if she had a public
comment. Hi. Okay.
What is that strange noise?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, a weird sort of tinny sound.
I think a little bit of bombing is going on, so I don't know if you'll have to check.
Or a ghost?
All right, hold on, Carol, hold on 1 second, please, while I try and determine if there's something happening. Oh, no, I don't think so. Okay. Carol, are you here to make public comment? Could you please?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Sure. Can you state your name and your city or town?
Yes. Carol Owen, Northampton, Ward 6. And I'll be brief. I think when first of all, I want to congratulate the counselors who have been trying to shepherd through this this resolution in support of the Fairness for Farm Workers Act. And for me, when I read the entire bill, some of the federal and the state bill, it seems like a no-brainer to me that we should provide equity for farm workers, frontline workers in agriculture, bring them up to minimum wage, provide them with overtime pay, all this, put them on the same standard as other workers who do similar work. And, it's not, for me, it's not just to bring these folks out of poverty, which would be a worthy, a noble gesture, but also if we leave this situation the way it is with sub-minimum wage, no breaks, no overtime, it deflates the wages of other workers in similar work. This is a well-known phenomenon, particularly in agriculture, but also other industries, that it has, a pernicious effect on wages and quality of life for workers who are not let's say, from newcomer populations. So that I want to just close by saying, I, really admire the energy that's gone into trying to get this resolution passed, and I certainly support it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, I see another hand, Margaret Sawyer. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm here from the Pioneer Valley Workers Center. I actually live in Amherst, but our office is based with you all in Northampton, and we work with immigrants and farm workers up and down the Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden counties. I'm very grateful to be back with you all. I appreciate the second reading to take a careful look at this, at the resolution for farm workers. And I just appreciate the thoughtfulness and care that you've put into this. And we're also really grateful. This will be the first town, city that signs on with a resolution to support the bill. And we think that's really meaningful. And our membership is excited too. And we're grateful to you all for thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any further hands. While I'm just waiting for one moment to see if any others pop up, I just want to make sure that people know that the recording of this meeting will be available on Northampton Open Media's Government Video Archive channel on YouTube. And we thank them as always for their public service. All right, I don't see any other hands. I'm also looking, let me scroll over. If anyone's trying to raise their hand physically, I don't see anyone. Okay, seeing no further public comment, Laura, will you please call the roll?
Councillor Dwight,
Here.
Councillor Foster,
Here.
Councillor Jarrett,
Here.
Councillor Labarge,
Councillor Labarge. Oh, Councillor Labarge, you're muted.
here, Councillor Maori,
Here.
Councillor Nash,
Here.
Councillor Quinlan,
I'm here.
Councillor Shara,
Here.
and Councillor Thorpe.
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, our first item on the agenda is the announcement of the tax classification hearing. Excuse me, per Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56. The Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 4th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m. by remote participation to discuss the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property within the city of Northampton for FY 2022. Information regarding this hearing will be available for public inspection online at northamptonma.gov on or before November 2nd, 2021 after 12 p.m. Instructions for accessing the hearing will be posted on the November 4th, 2021 City Council agenda, again at northamptonma.gov, no later than 48 hours prior to the meeting. And next, we have a public hearing. This is a public hearing on application to amend the license for storage of flammables and combustibles for 2 underground storage tanks, one 24,000 gallon gasoline and one 12,000 gallon diesel tank at 506 Pleasant Street in Northampton. And we're going to hold this public hearing right now.
Move to open the public hearing, please.
Second that.
Motion is made and seconded. And let me just go. So we have a memo, we have the application. And again, this is an application to amend. And who do we have, Laura, as a proponent?
Jason Freegan of Global Montello, and there may or may not be someone from O'Connell Oil.
Okay, so we're gonna go to proponents first. So
Oh,
Jason.
we need to vote to open
sorry.
the hearing.
Motion's been made and seconded, yes. Roll call, please, Laura, on opening.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
and Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now opened. Jason, welcome. Do you want to talk to us about this application?
I also have Brett Bignali here. He's
Oh.
the director of our maintenance
Okay,
with Global Montello.
welcome, both of you.
Yeah, so we have 3 tanks out there at Pleasant Street, and we wanted to convert one of them to a diesel tank. There were 2 regular tanks and a super tank, and the throughput there told us that, you know, we could sell diesel and it would be wanted by the population. So we're looking to add a diesel. None of the infrastructure is changing. Everything is existing. We're not adding a tank. We're not taking a tank out. We're not digging in the ground, anything like that. We're just changing the contents of one of the existing USTs.
Okay, thank you. Brett, welcome. Anything you want to add to that?
No, he summed it up quite nicely.
Okay, great. Any other people who want to speak in favor? Not seeing, feel free to raise your hand using the raise hand feature. Counselors, any questions, comments? Counselor Nash?
Yeah, I want to thank Jason for speaking with me today and clarifying this. I know on the application, it looks like it's 2 tanks, but there's actually 3 tanks in the ground that are existing. And that I don't know if that affects whether we need to change that on the application, but it's 3 existing tanks. So.
Counselor Maori?
I'm just wondering about the difference. So you're saying switching to diesel from what fuel?
Regular fuel.
Regular. Is there any, you know, kind of environmental differentiating kind of environmental impacts with the switch?
It's actually better for the environment. Diesel fuel.
There's less fumes, less emissions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Counselor Jarrett and Counselor Dwight.
Thank you. I noted in the application there's an older application for a license from 1989, and it's a little confusing. It seems to say that that 1,000-gallon tanks were permitted. I'm just curious when the licenses for the existing tanks were given.
I'm looking at that right now. Increase to 1,000 gallons, 1,000 gallons. Service station. I will have to look into when the original FP2 was issued. This looks like since 1989, unless I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I can look it up while we're talking.
Great.
Thank you.
Counselor Dwight. Oh, sorry, Laura, did you have something?
From the records in the city clerk's office, I believe the license has been amended several times since 1989. So you'd have to look at almost all of the amendments to see, well, we know what the volume is now, but what the initial volume was and how much it increased at each amendment.
Right.
I don't know if we have the details of the interim licenses. They're on file, they exist, but not here.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted, you know, it wanted it to be clear that the licensee is currently in compliance, and we are now just adjusting it further.
Yeah. Counselor Dwight, you had your hand raised.
Yep, it's just a curiosity question. I assume that you guys make the adjustments based on anticipated demand. I know that diesel's common fuel used in fleets, particularly larger vehicles, rigs and the like, also for farm equipment. It used to be more popular with things like VW diesels that since had a little bit of a problem relative to their emission standards. But are you guys anticipating that there will be a demand that would justify your switch here? I would assume.
Yes,
that's the case.
And to be totally honest, that is above my head in the company, all the financials of that. But we would we would not spend the money to convert it to diesel if we did not think that there was a demand out there.
I mean, it is correct. It's actually a better fuel to burn if you got to burn a fossil fuel, and also vehicles that run on diesel run cleaner, and also the prospects of tanking up at a gas station. It's difficult because they're few and far between, mostly when they're available particularly for cars. So I have no objections. Just me being curious about this discussion.
Mr. Garrett, just circling back to that, if I may, the 1984 revision brought the total gallons up to 37,000. It added 16,000, and they presently had 21,000. The 21,000 was as of 1976, and back in 1965, they had 16, they had maybe about 20,000 gallons there. So it appears that there have been many iterations, as Mrs. Krutzler had mentioned. But yeah, as staying within, I mean, like nothing has changed out there. Infrastructure wise, all the tanks are the same. Sorry. So it appears that yes, we are within our existing permit for storage.
Thank you.
Councilor Jarrett, our city clerk, Pam Powers, also said that she has that information. So, she says that her records are the same as what we're just told. So
Great to have that second confirmation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilors, other questions or comments? Councilor Nash.
Yeah, since this is Ward 3, I did a little research on this. So I think people would be happy to know that the operation is set up for diesel right now, but the diesel hoses, dispensers are capped right now with hoods. So they haven't started dispensing diesel yet. I want to thank, Jason, Wendy, Pam Powers, Chief Davin, and Captain Curtin for fielding my questions today. I feel like that all of the boxes have been checked off here in terms of this being a thoroughly thought through license. So thank you.
Thank you for that due diligence. Okay, councilors, if you don't have any other questions right now, this is a hearing, so I want to make sure that the public is invited to comment if there are any proponents for this or anyone who wants to speak against this amendment for this license. Please raise your hand. You can find the raise hand feature under reactions at the bottom in your bottom toolbar. So I'm not seeing any. Oh wait, I do see a hand just. Okay, Gwen. Can you unmute? There you go.
Yep, I more just had a question, and I was just wondering, is the existing tanks that are under the ground, are those going to be assessed to make sure that there's no leaks before it starts being used again, or it starts getting used?
Well, they are continuously monitored. We have some pretty high-tech equipment that monitors them, because we certainly do not want to release to the environment, and we want to monitor all of our fuel running through that station. So we have no reason to believe that there's any ongoing leak. We do continuous inventory monitoring. We have sensors, we have alarms. It's pretty heavily monitored. We do not have any plans to do like a subsurface investigation. If that's to poke some holes around looking for contamination, we don't believe there's any there to begin with. So, and we have no reason to believe that. So,
and we did perform precision tank testing.
Yeah.
In addition to our automatic tank gauge monitoring.
Thank you. Gwen, could you do me a favor? Could you state your name and your city or town for the record for this hearing, please? Oh, wait, you got muted. Hold on.
Yes, my name is Gwen Nabad and I live in Northampton.
Thank you. Okay, any other, looking for other hands from the public? I see you, Councillor Dwight. Councillor Dwight.
I presume these are federally and state mandated double wall tanks that have electronic monitoring for leaks, and as you guys are required to frequently test in order to determine leakage and breaches, if you will. Are these double wall tanks?
They are single wall tanks. They're single wall fiberglass tanks. And they are, like I said before, continuously monitored. They are annually tested. We have sensors. It's quite a little setup.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, they're in compliance.
Councillor Jarrett.
Mike, our city and this council is certainly concerned about environment and carbon emissions, and I was wondering if at present your station has any electric charging stations, or if you have any plans to put that in the future.
This station does not currently have any electric charging. Almost across the board, all of our new stations are installing electric charging. As an option, we are looking at retrofitting existing stations to include that. That's a bit of a infrastructure challenge to get that stuff put in, but we are certainly looking at that. And like I said, all of our new, we call them the stores of the future. You can get a latte and charge your Tesla or buy a fossil fuel.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for this license? Councilor Labarge, did I see your hand before?
Yeah, Alex just answered my question that I was going to ask about charging stations also.
Okay.
But
Oh, you're muted, Councilor Labarge. I don't know what happened.
okay, thank you. The fire department definitely has to go ahead and sign off a permit. So I would assume that they know exactly what's going on. And maybe, Brett, you could explain when the fire department signs off a permit, what do they actually do? They go on site, correct?
That's correct. They go on site, they do an inspection, they ensure that the site's in compliance. And then if it meets their standards, then they sign off on it.
Thank you very much, Brett.
Their inspections typically cover CCTV cameras, fire extinguishers, nozzles, public safety concerns, including compatibility of a product and preventing releases to the environment.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comment from the council or from the public? Again, public hearing. Anyone wants to weigh in, please feel free. Councilor Nash.
Yes, one quick, thank you, Council President. One quick question for Jason. In terms of the single wall tanks, what is the lifetime on one of those? I believe what the records I was looking at, this was put in 1984. And I'm wondering, at what point does a tank like this get retired?
There are no state or federal requirements for retiring a tank. We are starting to phase out our 1980 tanks. We're moving them along. That once they hit about 40 years, we look to start transitioning them out. So there isn't a reason to do that at this point, but it's something we're going to be looking at to do in the future. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but there's no statute to do that. A couple years ago, we had to get rid of the steel tanks. Every single wall steel tanks, they all had to be removed from the ground. That is not the case for fiberglass tanks in the state of Massachusetts.
Interesting. Thank you.
Gwen, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, so my question in that case would be in terms of the sensors and what those variations are and how they've changed since the 1980s, and if those sensors are measuring different gases at various levels. In other words, are the sensors updated to reflect the new any new EPA, or, and then the other thing is if it's near a climate justice community. Thank you.
Don't know about the climate justice community part of that, but yes, the sensors are updated and in compliance with current regulations. And that's an ongoing thing. They're much younger than these tanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further hands.
Move to close the public hearing, please.
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Laura, will you please take the roll?
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now closed and we're going to take the vote for this application for this license is on the consent agenda a little bit later on in the agenda. So moving on, any updates? Do we have any updates from committee chairs? Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Counselor Maori?
Yes, oops. I just wanted to announce the next select committee for council rules meeting is next Tuesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other committee chairs? Counselor Nash?
This is more of an announcement. So, well, actually, it's an update. So Councilor Quinlan and I continue to work on that issue of the early morning dumpster pickup. We've had some progress in reaching out to USA, and we'll be meeting with them again in November. And we're hoping to narrow things down so we can come up with a way forward. So we can eliminate a good portion of this early morning dumpster nuisance that's been going on. So that's the update.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other announcements? Councilor Maori?
Yeah, just announcing the annual Leeds pumpkin roll. My kids love this. It's total memory making stuff, and it's great for adults and kids alike. So we're rolling, pumpkins and having a pumpkin carving contest Saturday, October 30th. That's 4:30 to 8 p.m. And it's at the corner of Chestnut and Upland Road, which is above the Leeds Elementary School. All are welcome. I hope I'll see you there.
And thank you. Any other announcements from councilors? Councilor Jarrett?
The annual Florence Shag parade will be happening this year. And that's on Thursday, October 31st. I'm sorry, Saturday, October 31st. No, Sunday, October 31st. Sunday. Apologies. And it starts at Trinity Row Park. I believe it's requested that people come at 5, but starts off shortly at 5:30. So look forward to seeing you then.
Excellent. Councilor Labarge?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Jarrett. On the Shag parade, October 31st on Sunday. I think our judging will probably be starting around 5 o'clock. It's usually that way. Last year we didn't have it, but I would say around 5 o'clock, 5:30, we're done judging the costumes, and then everybody gets together and lines up and goes up on the parade with their costumes. It's just such a great night, and Hopefully all your counselors will participate. Bring your families. It's a lot of fun.
Sure is. And trick-or-treating downtown is happening again this year, or is back this year. So I want to make sure that people know that. Does anyone know what time? I think 1 o'clock, is that right? Oh, yeah, it starts at 1 o'clock downtown. Any other 1-minute announcements? Seeing none, Mayor Narcoitz, I see you here. Do you have any communications for us?
Yeah, I just had a quick communication. We're going to be putting out the information, I hope by tomorrow, but I wanted to just give folks a heads up that the city's been doing a series, sort of a 2-part study on municipal broadband with a consultant called Design 9. And obviously some of you know that there's an important question 1 on the ballot related to that. We are going to be having a public meeting next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. We'll be putting out the Zoom information on that. And actually Design 9 is going to be making a presentation on both the market and feasibility studies, both phases of the study. They're on the cusp of having that completed, and we're excited that they're going to be able to sort of present those results next week, so we can hopefully get some information out about that. And so we'll be sending out a notice possibly by tomorrow with the Zoom link for that, but it'll be 6 o'clock. It'll be a Zoom meeting. And again, it'll be a presentation by the city's consultants, Design 9, on their work around both the market study as well as the feasibility study for municipal broadband. And then the only other thing I would mention, I know there's been lots of announcements relative to Halloween and Halloween related items. The health department is going to be having a drive-through trick-or-treat flu clinic next Saturday at Smith Folk, because you know what goes together better than trick-or-treating and getting a flu shot. And so it'll be at Smith Vocational. I believe it's from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And costumes are encouraged, and there will be goodie bags, and this is an event that'll be happening again at Smith Vocational. And just you can drive there. They'll be collecting the relevant information. Folks are encouraged to bring their insurance information with them as well. And again, there will be treats, and children are encouraged to wear their costumes, and the whole family can get their flu shot, which is really critical this time of year as we're trying to make sure, in addition to COVID vaccines and COVID boosters, that we are also protecting ourselves against the flu this season.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on from announcements, we are at resolutions. So 21.340, a resolution in support of the Fairness to Farmworkers Act. This is on second reading. Is there?
Move to approve, please.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Quinlan. Discussion. Councilor Mayori, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah. So I just wanted to add a few things since our last reading. I went to the Agricultural Commission meeting this week, and it was just, it was I'm so glad I went. It was a real kind of relationship building moment. And I'm grateful for that as a counselor. As an aside, I think, with this new council coming in, new council members, I'm really going to encourage them to kind of stop on the different commissions and introduce themselves, because I think it's really valuable. And it's something that kind of got short-circuited in our beginning of our term as we figured out remote meetings and the pandemic. So I think it's very useful. I just want to, say that, the idea behind a resolution in support of a bill is, I'm sure like the Fairness to Farmworkers Act bill will kind of morph and change and have parts added and taken away as it makes its way through the legislature. That's the nature of bills. So this resolution is really supporting the spirit of the bill. The Fairness to Farmworkers Act is really the only pending bill that is attempting to correct this historical wrong. One thing I think everyone here knows is that we have a system in place in Massachusetts that underpays farm workers relative to all other workers. And we know this is not equitable, it's not working, and it needs to change. So the Fairness to Farm Workers Act is that change. And I believe, but I would have to check the participants that, again, Staff Attorney Claudia Quintero might be here she's the Migrant and Seasonal Farm Worker Project at the Central West Justice Center. If counselors have any questions, we can recognize her and ask her.
Great, thank you.
Rachel, we also have Attorney Bill Newman here too.
Hello, both of you. Are there other discussion by counselors? Okay, Counselor Quinlan, then Foster, then Jarrett.
Well, I just want to say I was grateful to the Agricultural Commission for their email today. I do have some regret that they felt left out of this discussion initially. I think as Councilor May already mentioned, we've all pledged to do the outreach work of the council. And in this case, I feel that, I owe them a little bit of an apology for not having done that, in all honesty. The points they raise about the hours needed to complete harvest and the impact specifically on large scale wholesale crop farmers is a bit concerning. Of course, I think business is important. And of course, as mentioned, our local farms are very important to our economy as well as to our way of life. But to me, this resolution boils down to 3 points. This is really what the bill is about, right? They are in the final whereas on the second page. Number 1 sets the wage for farm workers at the state minimum, which is testimony we've heard already. And this email even indicates from the Ag Commission that this is relatively moot, as most, if not all, Valley farmers pay at higher or minimum wage. 2 and 3 are about overtime pay for workers who work over 55 hours or work on scheduled days of rest. This is an interesting one, and it's a hard one, right? The AgCom tells us that local farmers are concerned that some of their workers will go elsewhere as economic opportunity may be greater. We're hearing that a lot right now about labor across all sorts of industries, right? People wanting or not wanting to work. Supply and demand applies to the work pool, to the labor pool as well. And so businesses have to compete for that labor pool. Increasing pay is one way to do it. I think that we're going to see a lot of creativity in this arena, basically, and it's going to have to cross industries, right? A lot of industries are doing things differently than they did even just 6 months ago to employ people. That said, what we're supporting here with this resolution is the Fairness to Farm Workers Act. It's a good thing for laborers. It's a good thing for their livelihoods, their health, and their dignity. So again, I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Foster, then Jarrett, then Councillor Labarge. Councillor Foster?
Councillors Maori and Quinlan sort of articulated well the spirit of what I wanted to say, so I won't belabor it other than to say that, as Councillor Maori pointed out, a resolution is in the spirit of the Fairness to Farm Workers Act, and were I in a legislative body actually writing the act, I would take a different approach. But the spirit of people who are paid less than in any other industry, working more hours, can lead to human exploitation, and that has to change. And for that reason, I do support the resolution, although I certainly understand that the bill as written will need to consider additional input and pressures on farmers, and at the same time, a system that relies on the exploitation of labor is one that we need to be looking at changing. So I recognize the reality of the pressures on some of the larger scale farms, and yet that's not a model that we would want to uphold. We'd be wanting to look for change on that. And then just to thank the Agricultural Commission for their outreach to us, particularly, their specific points there. I really appreciated and valued that input. As well as the points regarding solar on prime agricultural land. I just really appreciate their insight and their involvement here.
Thank you. Councillor Jarrett.
Yes, thanks to the last 3 councilors who spoke. You definitely covered many of my points. It's so clear to me that everyone deserves a fair minimum wage and to be paid fairly for overtime work. So I strongly support this bill. And the conversations I've had, the sticking point is in terms of the biggest area that's a concern to farmers has to do with the definition of who's a seasonal versus a non-seasonal worker and how that impacts in certain wholesale farming operations, that they may have to cut worker hours and attempt to hire more people, which may not be possible. So the point is there are discussions to be had and possible tweaks to the bill, but these are minor compared to the pressing need to ensure that everyone receives a fair minimum wage. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Labarge, then Councilor
Yes.
Dwight.
I think I said plenty at our first resolution, and I'm not going to change my mind on what I talked about because it came right from my heart. I want to thank Councilor Rachel Mayor for going to the Agricultural Commission meeting. It was excellent that she went there to explain a situation that there was a misunderstanding that had happened here. Anyways, I have said before, former Councilor Marilyn Richards and I worked very tirelessly as councilors, which she was from Ward 3, and we helped design the Agricultural Commission. I feel bad because they were not part of it, but because of you, Councilor Mayor, you were there, you talked, and you can see they're not here tonight. So they knew that what had occurred here, and we were there to listen, and we are listening. And I agree with you. I think there should be more support for the Agricultural Commission because it is our farmers. And there's no way that nobody could ever say that we don't care about our farmers locally here in our city of Northampton and throughout, because we do. We're looking at fairness to our Farmworkers Act to give them what they deserve, just like anybody else in the state of Massachusetts. You work over 45 hours a week, then you deserve to get that overtime. You should be treated equally like everybody else. It's very difficult to even get farm workers today, and there's no question about it. And I just feel that our farmers do take care of their farmers that come into work, because some of them are paying like $12 and $12 and up because they're good workers and they don't want to lose them, because it has become very, very difficult to keep farm workers today. So I am supporting this. I feel that the farm workers who are out there working throughout our community and throughout the state deserve to be treated like everybody else. There's no question about it. They should get overtime after the 45 hours a week or 40 hours a week. And also they should have a rest day. We all have a rest day, hopefully. And it's like, I just want everybody to be treated equally because they deserve that no matter who they are. They're out there, they used their hands. They're out there. And what do? They give us the nutrition that we get on our tables for our families. So how can we say no to a resolution like this? You are talking about giving them their equal rights, like my rights and you counselors and everybody else. So I said what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilor Dwight.
I also support this resolution and the intent of the legislation, the pending legislation. As I said, we in this valley have been way too comfortable enjoying the bounty of the valley without considering the consequences and impacts on an entire class of people that were virtually invisible. And the fact that the laws stand as they do now is actually we deserve to be criticized for that, and we should invest all our energies to change that. The thing I'm grateful for Councillor Quinlan's acknowledgement and expression of apology. about bypassing the Ag Committee. I think the Ag Committee, and that was part of my trepidation on the first reading. And I don't know, I'm going to project a little bit, I think, but Councilor Jarrett on some level too, that we actually do have a standing committee that actually addresses and has deeper knowledge of these issues. And they should have been informed of this discussion. I mean, as you discovered, they're not pushing you to change or reconsider this at all. But at the same time, that I think that it's appropriate. I mean, if it were a sustainability or energy issue, we would take it to that committee. If it was a youth-related issue, we would certainly bring it to the Youth Commission. I understand there was some urgency and everything else that's associated with it, but I would like to join Councilor Quinlan in sharing my apologies for not providing the deference and the opportunity for the Ag Committee to weigh in. And I'm glad that they now have had that opportunity before we do the final reading, which I fully intend to support. So yeah, that'll cover it. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm grateful for the work that happened between the first reading and the second reading, and that outreach to them, and their very gracious letter to us. Councilor Labarge.
Yes, Attorney Newman, would you like to speak at all?
I was going to ask the sponsors, if we have guests that are here, is there something in particular that you want them to share? Shall we recognize them? I don't want to just leave them.
I'd like to recognize Attorney Bill Newman, please.
That's a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I think he's.
Yeah, we just need to do a roll call real quick.
Okay.
Councilor Laura, roll call, please. You're muted, Laura.
Who was the second on the motion?
Councilor Thorpe?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
and Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Bill, you've been recognized.
That's quite a procedure to be recognized. Thank
Welcome
you.
to COVID procedure.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the council, and I want to thank all the councilors who have spoken in favor of the resolution. I think the points were well made. I think they're accurate. I think the discussion of the legislative process is correct. I think the support of this community and this council and this city for undoing a historic wrong that is statewide, because we're talking about a statewide sub-minimum wage of $8 an hour in 2021. And the question, of course, before the legislature will be is, what's the Commonwealth's position on this? And I appreciate in particular the comments about how farmers here in the Valley pay a rate far above that. And I think that when we take pride in our community and our farms and our farmers and our farm workers and the farmers who say, no, we pay a living wage. And I think that's something that we can take pride in. So I really have little to add. I thank you for your support. I look forward to working further on this bill with the members of the council and the community and the farmers and the farm workers, because at the end of the day, when this bill hopefully passes the legislature and receives the governor's signature, we're going to be proud. We're going to be proud of this council for passing this resolution. And I would defer to my colleague for Claudia Quintero for any further comments she might have. And for the record, before you ask, my name is Bill Newman. I live on Lyman Road. My office is in downtown Northampton, and I am a member of the Fairness for Farm Workers Coalition. Thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We need to move to recognize. Good. Councilor Mary.
Yeah, move to recognize Claudia Quintero.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Mary, seconded by Councilor Nash. A roll call, please, Laura.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Welcome, Claudia. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us back again. Thank you so much to the City Council for supporting this resolution and for bringing it forth. For those of you that might not remember, my name is Claudia Quintero. I'm a staff attorney at Central West Justice Center, and I run the Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Program. I'm also a member of the Fairness for Farm Worker Coalition, and we have offices up in Northampton. You might know us more as Community Legal Aid. And so all I want to share is that, the comments that we've heard about the concerns that farmers have raised we are well aware of them as the coalition, and we've been in communication with farmers for a while now about sort of their concerns. And also when we drafted this legislation, we were in communication with farmers about, what is the thing that might work or might not work. And so we've been hearing farmers and their concerns, and we respect the work that they do, and we want to work together to reach some resolution. But at the end of the day, as you've all stated, this legislation is to create some sort of equity and parity for farm workers in relation to other workers in the state. And so we are happy to keep having conversation. Conversation is important, and we want to hear from stakeholders. And so thank you for bringing those concerns to us. And we know that it's a long road ahead as we keep having these conversations, but we're so happy to have the City Council putting forth this resolution and supporting the spirit of the bill as it moves through the legislature. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, any further questions, comments, discussion about this resolution? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura, on a second reading.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in two readings and second reading. And thank you so much for joining us, all of you. Moving next, we are at the approval of the official map, block report, and legal boundary description for Northampton. This is on first reading. We're going to note that we either need two readings or we need to have a special meeting because this needs to happen before October 31st, 2021, which we've learned tonight is a Sunday. So it would have to happen even before then. So hopefully, just a little introduction. Hopefully you've all seen Laura's email that explains the options regarding the ordinance that's later on in the agenda, where there's a decision to be made. The solicitor has given an opinion that the council can revise the precincts by order. And his advice is to rescind or delete chapter 33, the election district section and section 1 in there. A section 1 division of wards, and to have the council enter the order containing the new precinct descriptions. But when we get to the ordinance, we'll decide whether we want to do that or whether we want to keep the ordinance, in which case we need to amend it by deleting it and replacing it with the new precinct descriptions. But this is the order. Let's put it on the floor first, and then we will discuss how to read it and make it known to the public.
Move to approve, please.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Dwight, and I think seconded by Councilor Jarrett. And I know that James Thompson is here. I know City Clerk Pam Powers is here. So, James, what do you think about this idea? This is a lot to read. I'm happy to read it. I do think that if we read it, the best way to make it clear to people what we're actually talking about is if we pull up the map and show the sections as they're being read into the record. Does that work for you? I can't hear you, James. I don't know why. Oh.
Oh.
Martians.
Very Halloweeny.
Can't hear. We hear something. It's not your usual voice.
Unless she has a helium balloon, I don't think so. That would be very entertaining though.
All right, well, while we try and sort that out, do you want to, while James is working on that for a second, Pam, is there anything you want to add about this process or talk about?
I think Laura had included the description in the on the agenda item of the things that I'm looking to have the city council approve. It is the map. It's also the description of the new territories. And you're also needing to approve all the blocks that are incorporated into each ward and precinct. So I have sent along all of those items to the city councilors this evening. Unfortunately, it was a little bit late, but you do have them, and the information that you're going to need to approve is contained in those files. I'm not sure. I agree that the best way to sort of evaluate what you're approving would be if James could post the map and then we read the descriptions and he follow along on the map.
Okay. I also want to note that there's some other members of this committee that did tremendous work. I see, everyone just moved. I see Robbie Sainer Sullivan here, and I think I saw the chair, David Stevens, here earlier. So we owe you all an incredible debt of gratitude for the amazing work that you all did. Okay, so we have the map up. So let me start. This is the order. Whereas Northampton City Charter, Article 8, Elections, Section 8-6 wards calls for the city clerk to establish 7 wards to consist of nearly an equal number of inhabitants. And whereas the Northampton City Charter further requires the City Council to review these wards every 10 years, and whereas Northampton is required by law to redraw precinct lines after the 2020 federal census concluded that existing precincts no longer meet the legal standard for equal number of residents per ward and precinct. Now, therefore, be it ordered that the city is hereby divided into 7 wards bounded as far as possible by the center line of known streets or ways or other defined limits described as follows. Now, Pam, would you agree, like, reading ward by ward, precinct by precinct is the best way, or is it better to look at the stuff that you had sent us?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
The list of blocks that I sent, those are really just numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, so the descriptions of each precinct are best to work from.
Are the way to go. Okay, so we're gonna read them because it's important for people to understand how these have changed. Councillor Foster.
Quick process note, is it possible to enlarge that map on the shared screen? Just to zoom in more on it.
Yes, James is the master.
I think the plan will be to enlarge the map for each precinct as we go through them. Yeah,
I think that's right. So right now we're going to start with Ward 1A. So I imagine that James is going to kind of zoom in on 1A. Okay, 1A. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows: beginning at the point of intersection of Broadbrook and the base of the Fitzgerald Lake Dam spillway, and proceeding northerly along Broadbrook to the Hatfield Northampton Town city line, and proceeding easterly along the Hatfield Northampton Town City line to the Hadley Northampton Town City line. And tell me if I'm going too fast, James. And proceeding westerly along the Hadley Northampton Town City line, so Norwotech Rail Trail, and proceeding southwesterly along the Norwotech Rail Trail to Bates Street, and proceeding northerly along Bates Street to the intersection of Bates Street, Bradford Street, and Industrial Drive, proceeding northwesterly along Industrial Drive, approximately 1,200 feet to the Northampton Storage Solutions private road, and proceeding southwesterly along Northampton Storage Solutions private road to the Boston and Maine Railroad right away, and proceeding northerly along the Boston and Maine Railroad right away to Damon Road, proceeding westerly along Damon Road to King Street, and proceeding southerly along King Street to Barrett Street, and proceeding westerly along Barrett Street to Jackson Street, and northerly along Jackson Street to Gleason Road, and then proceeding westerly along Gleason Road to Prospect Avenue, and proceeding northerly along Prospect Avenue to Bridge Road, and westerly along Bridge Road to North Elm Street, and continuing westerly along Bridge Road approximately 335 feet to the driveway parking lot entrance at 572 Bridge Road, and proceeding northeasterly approximately 350 feet along the driveway parking lot to Old Quarry Road, and proceeding northerly along Old Quarry Road to its terminus, and proceeding northerly approximately 4,900 feet from the Old Quarry terminus to the point of beginning. All right, that's 1A. Can everyone follow along with that little hand that James is moving along there? Okay, excellent. Okay, so that is 1A. Moving on to Ward 1B. All of that portion, this part gets repeated. So we'll just skip to beginning at the point of intersection of Hatfield Street and Locust Street, proceeding northerly along Hatfield Street to North Elm, and proceeding northerly along North Elm Street to Bridge Road, and proceeding easterly along Bridge Road to Prospect Avenue, proceeding southerly along Prospect Avenue to Gleason Road, and easterly along Gleason to Jackson Street, and southerly along Jackson to Barrett, and easterly along Barrett to King, and proceeding southerly along King to Finn, and proceeding westerly along Finn Street to Prospect Street, proceeding westerly on Prospect Street to Franklin Street, and proceeding southerly along Franklin Street to Elm Street, and proceeding westerly along Elm Street to North Elm, and northwesterly along North Elm to its intersection of Locust Street, Route 9, continuing westerly along Locust Street, Route 9 to the point of beginning. The point of beginning. Okay. So that was 1B. Moving on to 2A. Beginning at the point of intersection of Kensington Avenue and Mandel Road, proceeding easterly along Kensington to Elm, proceeding easterly along Elm to Paradise Road, proceeding southwesterly approximately 190 feet along Paradise to Smith College Access Road, proceeding easterly along 580 feet along Smith College Access Road to its intersection with College Lane, continuing southeasterly approximately 790 feet along the Smith College Access Road, and continuing northerly approximately 230 feet along the Smith College Access Road to Elm Street, proceeding westerly along Elm Street to Prospect Street, and proceeding northeasterly along Prospect to its intersection with Tyler Court, continuing northerly and westerly along Prospect to its intersection with Finn, proceeding northerly along Prospect to Franklin, proceeding southerly along Franklin to Elm, and westerly along Elm to its intersection with the Vernon Street, and proceeding southerly along Vernon Street to James Avenue, and continuing southeasterly along James Avenue to Washington Avenue, and northeasterly along Washington to Dryades Green, proceeding southeasterly along Dryades Green to its intersection with Kensington Avenue, continuing southeasterly approximately 160 feet on Dryades Green, and continuing westerly approximately 150 feet on Dryades Green, proceeding southerly approximately 205 feet to the Mill River, and easterly approximately 50 feet along the Mill River, and proceeding northeasterly approximately 345 feet to Smith College, to the Hashimi Neomiya access path, proceeding easterly approximately 225 feet along that access path to Paradise Road, and proceeding northeasterly along Paradise Road to its intersection with Mandel Road, and proceeding northwesterly along Mandel to the point of beginning. And there's the point of beginning. Okay, moving to 2B at the portion of the Hampshire County bounded and described as follows, beginning at the point of intersection of the Hampshire County Jail and House of Corrections driveway and Rocky Hill Road, proceeding northerly along the driveway of the Hampshire County Jail and House of Corrections to its intersection of the Department of Food and Agriculture private road, proceeding northerly along an Department of Food and Agriculture private road to its intersection with Burt's Pit Road, continuing northeasterly along Food and Agriculture Farm Road to Mill River, proceeding northerly approximately 1,700 feet along the Mill River to Broughton's Brook, proceeding northerly along Broughton's Brook to Federal Street, proceeding easterly along Federal to Vernon Street, proceeding southerly along Vernon to James Avenue, proceeding southeasterly along James Avenue to Washington Avenue, proceeding northeasterly along Washington to its intersection with Dryades Green, proceeding southeasterly along Dryades Green to its intersection with Kensington, and continuing southeasterly approximately 160 feet on Dryades Green and continuing westerly approximately 150 feet on Dryades Green, proceeding southerly approximately 205 feet to the Mill River, proceeding easterly approximately 50 feet along the Mill River and proceeding northeasterly approximately 345 feet to the Smith College Shimi Neomia access path, proceeding easterly approximately 225 feet along the access path to Paradise Road, proceeding northeasterly along Paradise Road to its intersection with Mandel, proceeding northwesterly along Mandel to intersection with Kensington, continuing on Kensington to Elm, proceeding easterly along Elm to Paradise Road, proceeding southwesterly approximately 190 feet along Paradise Road to the Smith College Access Road, proceeding easterly approximately 580 feet along the Smith College Access Road to its intersection with College Lane, continuing southeasterly approximately 790 feet along the Smith College Access Road, and continuing northerly approximately 230 feet along the Smith College Access Road to Elm Street, proceeding southeasterly along Elm to West Street, Route 66, proceeding southerly along West Street, Route 66 to its intersection with Belmont Avenue, proceeding southerly approximately 700 feet to Veterans Field Parking Lot Road, and proceeding easterly along the Veterans Field Parking Lot Road to the Manhattan Rail Trail, proceeding westerly along the rail trail to the Mill River Dike, proceeding northwesterly along the dike to West Street, Route 66, proceeding westerly along Route 66 to Earl Street, proceeding southerly along Earl to the Manhattan Rail Trail, proceeding westerly approximately 1,270 feet along the Manhattan Rail Trail to a brook, and proceeding northwest approximately 800 feet along the thread of the brook to Grove Street, and continuing southeasterly approximately 380 feet to the terminus of the Meadowland Condo Access Road, proceeding westerly along Meadowland Condo Access Road to Rocky Hill Road, Route 66, proceeding westerly along Rocky Hill Road, Route 66 to the point of beginning. Everyone doing okay? We're at 3A. We're not even. Well,
Let us know if you need a break, Council President.
Thank you.
Someone else could take over.
Thank you.
We should have made each counselor read their own ward.
Actually, that would have been. You're right. That would have been.
I only say that because mine's done.
Yeah, seriously. All right, Counselor Nash, 3A, you're up. Brilliant idea.
I'm gonna try this with my reading glasses.
I'm sorry. You know, I have this up in front of me, so you all do.
No, I'll give it a shot. If I get slow, you kick me out. Okay. Ward 3A. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows: beginning at the point of intersection of King Street, Main Street, Pleasant Street, and proceeding easterly along Main Street to Holly Street, and proceeding southeasterly along Holly Street to Butler Place, and proceeding easterly along Butler Place to Pomeroy Terrace, and proceeding northerly along Pomeroy Terrace to Bridge Street, Route 9, and proceeding northerly along Bridge Street, Route 9 to southbound Interstate 91 Highway, and proceeding northwesterly along southbound Interstate 91 Highway to the Norwottuck Rail Trail, and proceeding easterly along the Norwottuck Rail Trail to the Hadley Northampton Town City line, and proceeding southerly along the Hawley Northampton Town City line to the East Hampton Northampton Town City line, and proceeding westerly along the East Hampton Northampton Town City line to Mount Tom Road, Route 5, and proceeding northerly along Mount Tom Road, Route 5 to Pleasant Street, and proceeding northerly along Pleasant Street to Dyke Road, and proceeding westerly along Dyke Road to Lyman Road, and proceeding northwesterly along Lyman Road to South Street, Route 10, and proceeding northerly along South Street, Route 10 to Old South Street, and proceeding northwesterly along Old South Street to its intersection with Conn Street, and continuing northerly along Old South Street to the Manhan Rail Trail, and proceeding easterly along the Manhan Rail Trail to Pleasant Street, and proceeding northwesterly along Pleasant Street, Route 5 to the point of beginning.
All right, well done.
Okay, let's do 3B. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows, beginning at the point of intersection of Main Street and Pleasant Street and proceeding easterly along Main Street to Hawley Street and proceeding southeasterly along Hawley Street to Butler Place and proceeding easterly along Butler Place to Pomeroy Terrace and proceeding northerly along Pomeroy Terrace to Bridge Street, Route 9, and proceeding northerly along Bridge Street, Route 9 to southbound Interstate 91 Highway, and proceeding northwesterly along the southbound Interstate 91 Highway to the Norwotic Rail Trail, and proceeding southwesterly along the Norwotic Rail Trail to Bates Street, and proceeding northwesterly along Bates Street to the intersection of Bates Street, Bradford Street, and Industrial Drive, and proceeding northwesterly along Industrial Drive approximately 1,200 feet to its intersection with the Northampton Storage Solutions private road, and proceeding southwesterly along the Northampton Storage Solutions private road to the Boston and Maine Railroad right-of-way, and proceeding northerly along the Boston and Maine Railroad right-of-way to Damon Road, and proceeding westerly along Damon Road to King Street, and proceeding southerly along King Street to the point of the beginning. And that's it.
Well done. All right. Councilor Thorpe, you up for it?
You live in Ward 4 too, Councilor Sierra.
I sure do. Wow.
Don't forget Councilor Dwight.
I live in Ward 1. I'm done.
I'm gonna start right now. I'm missing a little hand going around. Okay, so Ward 4A. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows, beginning at the point of South Street, Route 10, and School Street, and proceeding westerly along School Street to Clark Avenue, and proceeding northerly along Clark Avenue to Veterans Field Parking Lot Access Road, and proceeding westerly along Veterans Field Parking Lot Access Road to its intersection with the Manhan Rail Trail, and proceeding northerly approximately 70 feet to the intersection with Belmont Avenue and West Street, Route 66, and proceeding northerly along West Street, Route 66 to Elm Street, and proceeding northerly along Elm Street to Prospect Street, and proceeding easterly along Prospect Street to its intersection with Tyler Court, and continuing northwesterly along Prospect Street to Fenn Street, and proceeding easterly along Fenn Street to King Street, proceeding southerly along King Street to its intersection with Main Street and Pleasant Street, and proceeding southeasterly along Pleasant Street, Route 5 to the Manhan Rail Trail, and proceeding westerly along the Manhan Rail Trail to Old South Street, and proceeding southerly along Old South Street to the point of beginning. That is 4A. 4B. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows, beginning at the point of South Street, Route 10, and School Street, and proceeding westerly along School Street to Clark Avenue, and proceeding northerly along Clark Avenue to Veterans Field Parking Lot Access Road, and proceeding westerly along Veterans Field Parking Lot Access Road to the Manhan Rail Trail, and proceeding southwesterly along the Manhan Rail Trail to the Mill River Dike, and proceeding northwesterly along the Mill River Dike to West Street Route 66, and proceeding westerly along West Street Route 66 to Earl Street, and proceeding southerly along Earl Street to the Manhattan Rail Trail, and proceeding westerly approximately 1,270 feet on the Manhattan Trail to a brook, and proceeding northwest approximately 800 feet along the thread of the brook to Grove Street, and continually southeasterly approximately 380 feet to the terminus of the Meadowland Condominium Access Road, and proceeding westerly along the Meadowland Condominium Access Road to Rocky Hill Road, Route 66, and proceeding westerly along Rocky Hill Road, Route 66 to the Hampshire County Jail and House of Corrections driveway, and proceeding northerly along the Hampshire County Jail and House of Corrections driveway to Burt's Pit Road, and proceeding westerly along Burt's Pit Road to Florence Road, and proceeding southerly along Florence Road to the East Hampton, Northampton Town City line, and proceeding easterly along the East Hampton, Northampton Town City line to Mount Tom Road, Route 5, and proceeding northerly along Mount Tom Road, Route 5 to Dyke Road, and proceeding westerly along Dyke Road to Lyman Road, and proceeding westerly along Lyman Road to South Street Route 10, and proceeding northerly along South Street Route 10 to the point of beginning. That is 4B.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well done. All right. Counselor Jarrett.
All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows. Beginning at the point of intersection of Bardwell Street and North Main Street, and proceeding easterly along Bardwell Street to North Maple Street, and proceeding northerly along North Maple Street to Sheffield Lane, and proceeding easterly along Sheffield Lane to Hillcrest Drive, proceeding northerly along Hillcrest Drive to Bridge Road, and proceeding easterly along Bridge Road to North Elm Street, and proceeding southerly along North Elm Street to Hatfield Street, proceeding westerly along Hatfield Street to Locust Street, proceeding westerly along Locust Street to Berkshire Terrace, and proceeding southerly along Berkshire Terrace to South Main Street, proceeding easterly along South Main Street to Beacon Street, proceeding westerly along Beacon Street to Mann Terrace, proceeding westerly along Mann Terrace to its intersection with Pine Street and Maple Street, and proceeding north on Maple Street to its intersection with Main Street, North Maple Street, and North Main Street, and proceeding northwesterly along North Main Street to the point of beginning. For Ward 5B, beginning at the point of intersection of Pine Street and Florence Road, and proceeding easterly along Pine Street to Park Street, proceeding northerly along Park Street to Meadow Street, proceeding easterly along Meadow Street to North Main Street, easterly along North Main Street to Maple Street, southerly along Maple Street to the intersection of Maple Street, Pine Street, and Mann Terrace, proceeding easterly along Mann Terrace to Beacon Street, easterly along Beacon Street to South Main Street, northerly along South Main Street to Berkshire Terrace, northerly along Berkshire Terrace to Locust Street, easterly along Locust Street to Hatfield Street, continuing on Locust Street to its intersection on North Elm Street, continuing on to North Elm Street to Elm Street, and continuing on Elm Street to Vernon Street, southerly along Vernon Street to Federal Street, westerly along Federal Street to Broughton's Brook, southerly along Broughton's Brook to the Mill River, southwesterly approximately 1,700 feet along the Mill River to the Department of Food and Agriculture Farm Road, southwesterly along the Department of Food and Agriculture Farm Road to Burt's Pit Road, and westerly along Burt's Pit Road to Florence Road, northerly along Florence Road to the point of beginning.
Excellent.
Council President,
Yes.
if I may, I acknowledge that as an at-large councilor that I probably foregone my responsibility in this regard.
You feeling
And I don't know if the council from Ward 6 would allow me to read the two shortest ones, then I could feel less guilty about my
Councilor Labarge, what's your pleasure? Would
behavior.
you like to read it or do you want to?
I'll read it, but I don't want to be doing the map thing.
Oh, no, we're not doing the map. That James is doing the map.
I'll read it.
Yeah, you have it in front of
I
you?
have a problem and I'll have Counselor Dwight take over.
Okay, sorry,
Sure.
Counselor Dwight. Maybe someone else will give you
Yeah.
one of theirs.
Well, there's only one more left to go, and it has
That's
a
true.
counselor that can handle it too as well, who seems eager. But I'll step up if Leeds. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I would rather you, so I could follow the map,
I
actually.
know, Ward 6A. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows. Beginning at the point of intersection of Parsons Brook and Ryan Road and proceeding northerly along Parsons Brook to the power line right of way and proceeding easterly along the power line right of way to Florence Stream and proceeding easterly along Florence Stream to Florence Pond shoreline and proceeding easterly along Florence Road shoreline to the Florence Stream and proceeding easterly along Florence Stream to Florence Road and proceeding easterly along Florence Road to Pertspit Road and proceeding westerly along Pertspit Road to the intersection of Pertspit Road and Ryan Road and proceeding westerly along Pertspit Road to the intersection of Pine Valley Road and continuing westerly along Pertspit Road to the point of beginning. That takes care of 6A.
Sure does.
Okay, 6B. All of that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows. Beginning at the point of intersection of Turkey Hill Road and the Westampton, Northampton Town City line and proceeding easterly along Turkey Hill Road to Parsons Brook and proceeding easterly along Parsons Brook to Sylvester Road and proceeding southerly along Sylvester Road to Ryan Road and proceeding easterly along Ryan Road to Pertspit Road and proceeding easterly along Pertspit Road to Florence Road and proceeding southerly along Florence Road to the East Hampton / Northampton Town / City line and proceeding westerly along the East Hampton / Northampton Town / City line to the West Hampton / Northampton Town / City line and proceeding northerly along the West Hampton / Northampton Town / City line to the point of beginning. And that takes care of 6B.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Councilor Maori, did you want me to read yours while you follow along?
Yeah, I would love that actually, because I would rather follow the map. I'm more of a visual learner.
7A is the
Okay,
doozy.
well, that will allow me to sleep tonight. So I will feel that I've paid my penance.
Can you start with the night before Christmas and then go?
Sure.
Yes.
You want a little prologue first? Okay.
Do it like
No,
Gregory.
here we
Peck.
go.
Don't
You want
encourage
me to
him, you
do it
guys.
like
Don't
Gregory
encourage
Peck?
him.
All of the portion of Hampshire County
I don't
bounded.
know.
No, okay. I'm sorry. And described as follows. Beginning at the point of the intersection of Bardwell Street, North Main Street, and proceeding southerly along North Main Street to Meadow Street, and proceeding westerly along Meadow Street to Park Street, and proceeding southerly along Park Street to Pine Street, and proceeding westerly along Pine Street to the Mill River, and proceeding northerly along the Mill River to Meadow Street, and continuing along the Mill River to Willow Lake Brook, and proceeding northerly along Willow Lake Brook to Look Park Drive, and proceeding northerly along Look Park Drive to Underpass Road, and proceeding easterly along Underpass Road to Haydenville Road, and proceeding northerly approximately 2,750 feet along the Haydenville Road to a point opposite 208 Haydenville Road, and proceeding easterly approximately 440 feet along the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and proceeding approximately northerly 183 feet along the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and proceeding easterly approximately 2,100 feet along the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and proceeding northerly approximately 3,800 feet to the Beaver Brook tributary, and proceeding easterly approximately 420 feet along the Beaver Brook tributary, and proceeding northeasterly approximately 390 feet along the Beaver Brook tributary to the Williamsburg-Northampton town city line, and proceeding easterly along the Williamsburg-Northampton town city line to the Hatfield-Northampton town city line, and proceeding easterly along the Hatfield-Northampton town city line to Broadbrook, and proceeding southerly approximately 4,900 feet along the Broadbrook to the base of the Fitzgerald Lake Dam spillway and to the terminus of Old Quarry Road, and proceeding southerly along the Old Quarry Road to the driveway parking lot of 572 Bridge Road, and proceeding approximately 350 feet southwesterly along the driveway parking lot to Bridge Road, and proceeding westerly along Bridge Road to Hillcrest Drive, and proceeding southerly along Hillcrest Drive to Sheffield Lane, and proceeding westerly along Sheffield Lane to North Maple Street, and proceeding southerly along North Maple Street to Bardwell Street, and proceeding westerly along Bardwell Street to the point of the beginning. That was Precinct A, Ward 7. And now, Precinct B. Also, all that portion of Hampshire County bounded and described as follows. Beginning at the point of the intersection of the Williamsburg-Northampton town city line and the West Hampton-Northampton town city line, and proceeding easterly along the Williamsburg-Northampton town city line to Beaver Brook tributary, and proceeding southerly approximately 390 feet along the Beaver Brook tributary and continuing westerly approximately 420 feet along the Beaver Brook tributary and proceeding southerly approximately 3,800 feet to the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and proceeding approximately 2,100 feet westerly along the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and then proceeding southerly approximately 183 feet along with the Department of Veterans Affairs property border, and proceeding westerly approximately 440 feet along the Department of Veterans Affairs property border to a point opposite 208 Haydenville Road, and proceeding southerly along Haydenville Road to the Underpass Road, and proceeding westerly along Underpass Road to Look Park Drive, and proceeding southerly along Look Park Drive to Willow Lake Brook shoreline, and proceeding southerly along Willow Lake Brook shoreline to the Mill River, and proceeding southerly along the Mill River to Pine Street, and proceeding westerly along Pine Street to Florence Road, and proceeding easterly along Florence Road to Florence Road to Florence Stream, and proceeding westerly along Florence Stream to Florence Pond shoreline, and proceeding westerly along Florence Pond to Florence Stream, and proceeding westerly along Florence Stream to the path of the power line, and proceeding westerly along the path of the power line to Parsons Brook, and proceeding southerly along Parsons Brook to Ryan Road, and proceeding westerly along Ryan Road to Sylvester Road, and proceeding northerly along Sylvester Road to Parsons Brook, and proceeding westerly along Parsons Brook to Turkey Hill Road, and proceeding westerly along Turkey Hill Road to the West Hampton-Northampton town city line, and then proceeding northerly along the West Hampton-Northampton town city line to the point of the beginning, which is actually the end.
It's unbelievable.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your help. I'm very sorry, Counselors Quinlan and Foster, that you didn't get that experience. Feel free to read those to your families at home. You will enjoy them. Thank you, James, for that excellent map handwork. Okay, counselors, I can't see all of you very well, but I'm looking. Do we have questions, comments? Would it be helpful, Pam? I don't know how easy this would be to, I mean, we just read all of this, but if there's, how easy it would be, or the chair, David Stevens, somebody or someone from the committee to sort of highlight the largest changes. I don't know if that would be helpful for folks, or I'm getting a thumbs up from Counselor Quinlan on that. Yeah. Do we need to move? Do you all want to move to recognize the full committee? Is that Councilor?
I don't think that's necessary under our rules. I mean,
Okay.
this was a
They're-
presentation by that committee, so
Awesome.
they're
Great.
already recognized.
They're already recognized. Welcome. Although they can't unmute unless I let them mute. So Pam, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I think I'd like to ask the chair, David Stevens, who tells me that he is not going to be doing this in 10 years.
That's what he says.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what he
right.
says, but you know, if he would like to speak to some of the major changes that have happened, I certainly could do it, but I think I'd like to give him an opportunity to address the group.
Thank you. Yes, please do. And just let me take a moment to thank you all again. Having all of us having just read that, imagine having to write that. That was a huge, not to mention figure it out and then actually put it into words. So I'm in awe of the work that you all have done.
I would begin by thanking Pam and James. They did the legwork on this, working with our friends at the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office to get the verbiage down so we understand. What seems odd for someone who is just tuning in to understand this is these seem a little weird, a little sharp, some of the edges, but that has to do with census blocks. We do not control census blocks. That's by the federal government. There used to be 700 plus, now there's 500. They've changed in the last 10 years, but you have to move these census blocks around like a jigsaw puzzle. And every time we called it whack-a-mole or robbing Peter to pay Paul, however, whatever one you want to go down that path. If you move 20 people from back into Ward 7, you would end up with having to make a change in Ward 4 or Ward 6. So that was the juggling act that had to go around, because each ward has to have an average number and plus or minus 5%, and each precinct has to have a average number plus or minus 5%. And if they're not correct, and James can put the chart up at some point in the future, if they're not correct, we can be disallowed. We also have to worry about things like sharp edges and, you know, that do we have any fingers or dangling toes? And those are things that we talked about as a committee. I want to thank the committee, the 6 members that worked with me on this to get this done. I want to thank the city councilors and the public who all weighed in on this as we've gone over this. I remind everybody that we got the census numbers in late September, and we have a deadline that if we do not meet, we will be forced to accept a map that I believe is strongly problematic for some wards. So I appreciate everybody ramping up. For those in the public who want to know, we met Sunday night this week to go through this, and Pam and James were in there late on Friday into the weekend, making sure this all worked, and then have worked their tails off to get this verbiage correct, because that is also what you need to make sure is documented. It's not just a map. You have to have that verbiage in there and the rest of the things. The overall principle of what we try to do is to be as least disruptive as possible. Having done this in 2001 and 2011, we are not going to make everybody happy, but we're going to try to keep them in their original wards or original precincts if possible, their original voting locations if possible. But given that there's 1,000 more people in our city called Paradise, we have to be able to integrate those in. And we have seen neighborhoods shrink and we've seen neighborhoods expand. For instance, Ward 6A, in 2011, Ward 6A had expanded. There were a lot more people in 6A. So we had to draw the line down Ryan Road. So all the people who lived literally across the street from Ryan Road School, where they had voted for the last decade, now had to drive up to Leeds School to be able to vote. So that changed this time. We were able to bring those people back into 6A, because 6A itself, that triangle that exists between those 3 major cities, or 3 major roads, had shrunk in population. And that population shrinkage then caused the need to expand 6A. And we went back and grabbed Alamo Court and those people on the northern side of Ryan Road. That happened throughout the city. There was trying to be a movement throughout the city where we had to do some things. I appreciate the work that Howard did, that Robbie did, trying to get our voting precincts aligned, because there's some rules about how far a voting precinct can be away from the precinct itself. And that was tricky. And Robbie worked her tail off on that. We had some blocks that are huge. James, I don't know if you can show us our 702 block. For those who are familiar with Smith College campus, the big block is right there. That's the quad. We all know that's where most of the women live, is in the quad, and that's 702. That is 1/3 of what a precinct can be. And that was sort of our anchor, that we had to work around that 1/3 and make sure that the maximum stayed below that. And that was tricky. James, can you put the chart up at all that we could take a look? Yeah. And here are the census blocks. Is that right? Those numbers look odd, James, because it says 70 in that one block. Where are we? Yeah, there's a 702. So each of those little squares or funny shaped containers, if you will, has a number to it. They're very small, but if you scroll in, you'll see that. And that's what gets you there. So that 702 then gets added to the blocks around it until you hit that maximum. And then you have to adjust your border, because you cannot go above the maximum. James, do you mind showing the chart? And the governing chart that you have to do, again, is 5% in each precinct. That has to be the same. And in each ward, it has to be 5%. If we have 7 wards and we have 29,000 residents, you divide that by 7. In the same with the precincts. If we have 14 precincts, they have to hit an average. So this is the chart that James maintained. You can see that if it gets enlarged a little bit, you can see where some are under by 3.1%, some are over by 1.9%, but you can do a maximum of 5 in any of that column. I want to defer back to my new friend, Pam, who, again, your attention to detail amazed the heck out of me. When, I'm still trying to figure out, okay, where is, and Pam had it down. She knew exactly where it was and was able to document it so we could go back and revisit that. So I thank Pam for her attention to detail. I thank James for his ability to manipulate the maps to include a ward here or a ward there. I thank the city councilors who participated, and I particularly thank the 6 other members of the committee who did an extraordinary work. This was time truncated because the census was late delayed, and it has an impact upstream in terms of other districts that get defined. So we had to get our work done in a very, very short timeline, shorter than 2011 and 2001. And somehow I think we've presented you with a map that is the least disruptive as we could do. It's not a map that if we had 3 more months like we did last time, we could have refined it a little bit more, but we do not have the time because, again, if you look at the map that was originally proposed, I believe that it has far more disruptions than this map that we see now. So I turn it back to Pam for comment because, again, her attention to detail was extraordinary, and the city is grateful that you and James are civil servants helping us get through this process.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to say thank you to all of the participants and the city councilors who helped in this process. It was a great collaboration of residents who were able to talk about neighborhoods, talk about the needs of each of those neighborhoods, and help put together a map that really does, in fact, look a lot like it did in 2010. And we really did try to minimize the amount of disruptions that we saw, as David had alluded to. We're still going to be able to have all of the same voting, the same precincts, voting in the same locations. That's great news because it saves us a lot of work. Even though some residents might move to a different polling location, that I can't guarantee for everyone. But we're still going to be able to make use of the Smith Vocational School for Ward 2A, B, and 5B, the Leeds School for 7B, the JFK Middle School for Ward 7A, the Civic Center for 5A, the Ryan Road School for 6A and 6B, the Jackson Street School for 1A and 1B, and the Senior Center for Wards 3 and 4, both precincts, A and B for both of those. So that's great. That's really a good thing for Northampton. One of the significant changes is, of course, that Ward 2 has shrunk in terms of the size of its footprint, its geographical footprint, while 7 and 6 have grown slightly larger. So that's as a result of things like population shifts, new growth that we've seen in the past 10 years. And all of this data had to be somehow worked out between all of the members of the committee to sort of help make this map possible. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
And that's it.
I have a couple of quick questions. One, people who their wards it's going to change, their ward is going to change, or their precinct's going to change. How are people going to be notified, or what's that process for making sure that people know they're new?
So the important thing is that the wards and precincts will not change before December 31st. So whatever your polling location is today, that will be your polling location through the end of the year. We are required by law to notify every single person whose polling location shifts, and we'll be doing that probably between early spring and summer next year to get us ready for the state elections that will be happening in September and November of 2022.
Excellent, thank you. My other quick question is, looking at that chart, it looked like 4A is kind of the closest to that 5%. I think it was 4.92. Is that any concerns that that's so close to that edge? No? Okay, I see David shaking his head. Okay, excellent, thank you. Whose hand did I see? Okay, Councilor DeBarge and Councilor Quinlan.
Yes, I want to thank Pamela Powers and James Thompson and David Stevens. I mean, 5 times, right, David? 5 times.
3.
3. Okay, 3 times, and this time makes 4, right? Or 3?
This is the 3rd.
And you're saying we probably won't see you in 10 years? I hope we do. But anyways, I want to thank the rest of the committee. This was something that really had to be done. There's no question about it. Your time limit was very scarce and you all did a fantastic job. And I have to say, thank you for doing such a great job, every one of you. Thank you on that committee.
Here.
And also, I think we need to look at Pamela Powers and James here. I mean, how many hours, extra hours are you putting in, Pam? I mean, don't tell me you're just working from 8:30 to 4:30. You're spending a lot of time on making sure that everything is correct that you're presenting to us.
Yeah, the number of hours
showing, Pam, you know, it's like, thank you, and James for everything.
In the middle of an election. It's not like this is spring or something. This is like peak season for her office, and she had to squeeze this in between the preliminary and the general. So again, kudos to her office, to her in particular, and to James up in planning.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Councilor Quinlan.
Well, I would just echo my thanks as well to all the members of the committee and James and Pam as well. It's just terrific work, and it's really, when you read all those words, which I didn't do out loud, of course, but I did listen in, and it was, just to put all of that map to words is just pretty amazing. I did have a question, and this came up in a meeting that I attended with you all recently, and I just want to make sure I understood the answer properly. So if you are a resident of Ward 1 today, like Councilor Dwight, for instance, and you voted, you're going to vote for a city councilor and a school committee person, and then you're going to be living in Ward 4 whenever this is approved by the state. Would that councilor remain your councilor, or would you now be part of Ward 4, next year when this change happens? I just want to make sure I understand this way in terms of explaining it.
Right. So whatever counselor that you vote for on November 2nd will continue to represent you until the following election.
Okay. Okay, very well.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the process goes a little bit further in terms of that we have to not only get it approved by the Secretary of State, but we're going to depend on our representative, Lindsay Sabadoza, and our Senator, Joe Comerford, to get it through the legislature. Because again, this is a special act that we're doing it ourselves and not accepting what the Secretary had put forward. So this process has to be completed by June 30th. Hopefully it'll be completed over the winter holidays when they have general sessions in place. But there is a couple of steps left to go before it is finalized, and Pam then can notify anybody that was dislocated. Our apologies to those folks, but if you live in a bordering community that's between two wards, 10 years from now, you might flip back. So just hold your breath and we might be there. And I did get some commitments, by the way, from some of the other 6 who are willing to come back. I'm not going to name names, but they are willing to come back and do this 10 years from now, because I think they have again, the history that they can carry forward, which I think is important in the process.
Great, thank you.
Other Councillor Foster, then Councillor Nash.
Yeah, I just would like to echo the gratitude and the thanks. Ward 2 was well represented by Robbie Sullivan. I really appreciated the meeting I was able to attend. I just saw from all of you on the committee your real thoughtfulness toward where residents identified where their polling location was, and how we could make voting the most accessible to them, and also be able to maintain neighborhoods with some integrity within ward boundaries. And Ward 2 is a ward that has seen significant shift, and looking at this map, that's challenging, but decisions had to be made, and I'm really grateful for your work. And to me, this looks like a map and a plan that's going to benefit or be needed for our city. So thank you very much.
Abby, if there's anything you want to say, I just want to give you the opportunity.
Sure. I guess I'll say if I had a hint that I didn't have a map mind before this, I know that I don't have a map mind now. So I really appreciate Pam and James and David. And I know Howard Moore spent a lot of time trying to help just moving blocks around. It just doesn't work in my head. But yeah, 2A is going to see quite a bit of change. And I know that if this is approved, what we're submitting to the state, because of a funky bow tie shape, could get kicked back. And that might mean, splitting up Woodlawn and Franklin, but we're trying to avoid that. And I think this plan, along with keeping us voting at Smith Boak, is the best possible plan to put forward. So it was a huge learning curve and very interesting. I enjoyed myself. So thank you.
Thank you for that work. Councillor Nash, were you next? Is that right? And then Councillor Maori.
Yeah. I just want to really quickly express my gratitude to the committee and to the key players on the team here, Pam, David, and James. And that I got a little bit cranky almost, and Howard Moore stepped in, and I can't say enough about Howard and James methodically working their way through the map to come up with something that seemed to work. So really appreciate all of the effort that went into this. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay, who is next? Councillor Labarge? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Mary. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank you for the time you spent with me on the phone. That was actually really helpful, kind of hearing the history of especially my ward. And I thought the forums were, I went to a couple at least, and they were really helpful. And yeah, thank you to the committee. And I hope you all sleep better after we vote, or at least your dreams will not include brooks and rocks and other things. And also, I just got to say to Councilor Foster that Councilor Labarge and I are going to get pretty buff canvassing next election. So there's that.
Or I'll be able to do this.
Right. You can come and pick us up on your bike.
Councilor Dwight.
Well, okay. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize and acknowledge the intense work that went on in this. And actually, it's the irony here, David, is that when you did this in the past, you didn't have the technology that James is able to bring to it. But then, of course, you had 3 extra months. So whatever benefit that was realized through that was completely offset by the fact that you guys had to go in a dark frenzy. Robbie has served on some of the most significant committees here in the city. And the fact that we can get her to commit to another one like this is astonishing. Good on you, Robbie. Yep, you earned your wings. And it is true of the other members. I know there's another member that shares a similar name to me. I don't know how she behaved. I hope she was thoughtful and contributed a lot.
Behave.
I have lived through this a few times myself, not in the level of intensity that you've experienced, but have been on the receiving end of adjusted boundary lines. And one time I almost got districted out as a counselor for Ward 1 at one point. But the fact is that this is the most elaborate one of those tile puzzles that we used to get free at the dentist office or something, trying to move one square and get the numbers all to align. And but this is 1,000 times more complicated. And I've always appreciated the energy and the work that's gone into it. I understand the reasons for it. And ultimately, if it's any consolation to anyone, it really doesn't have a very immediate or powerful or deleterious impact on your lives in your community. I mean, the fact is my counselor will change to the ward. I'll have a Ward 4 counselor instead of Ward 1. But the fact is it's not like they're banned from talking with me if I have an issue. And it's not all of us as counselors we're required to vote with the city in mind while representing each of our wards. So for any folks who feel that they're losing something by suddenly changing their voting precinct, which essentially that's the impact that it has, and your counselor. But in that regard, it's actually shaking a snow globe, and I think that's ultimately a good thing. So, yes, thank you all very much. I admire you beyond the ability to describe, and I'm grateful for the work. I'm grateful for the fact that you guys keep coming back, and maybe there's a group that you can go to work out your issues as far as that goes. I mean, maybe you could, there's a meeting or something, you might have a problem, but the fact is we benefit from your problem. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Quinlan.
Oh, I forgot to ask, is it possible for us to get that map now to share with people?
You should have it, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can now, actually. Yeah. Hi, James.
Hi, I sent everything to Laura and to Pam. It's all printable on 8.5 by 11 to make sure it will fit on anybody's printer. And because it's a PDF file, it can print to any size paper that your printer will support.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura, on a first reading on this order.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councilor Shara.
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
I would move to suspend rules to allow for a second reading.
I'll second
Oh,
that.
Second.
Pam has something to say.
Yes, Pam?
Yeah, sorry. So the state was very clear that what the city council needed to approve were all of those blocks, that list of blocks that we sent you, as well as the description, which is the order, and the map. So I didn't mean to disrupt the process, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that you guys will need to approve that as well. All of the blocks that we've incorporated in those boundaries and the map itself.
So I believe when I read the order, it's an order to, oh, so let's look at them. Hold on, let me find the order again though. Okay, we're looking at that. So the order, it's an order to define, okay.
Right. I believe Laura described it on the,
Right. I said approval of official map, block report, legal boundary description for Northampton first reading.
May I amend my motion then to include the map? Wait a minute. That would be second reading. We're in second reading. Actually, I would like to make them after we suspend rules, if we're going to suspend rules, and I'll make a motion that would include the map as amended, and amend it to include the map.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
And so it's the map. So we just read the legal boundary description. So it's the map and the block report, right? Okay, so that will be the amendment. Okay. But the motion's been made and who seconded?
I did.
Okay, to suspend rules. Any discussion on suspension of rules? I can't really see you all, but I don't think so. Roll call, please, Laura, on suspending rules.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.
I would move to accept the order and to amend it with the inclusion of the map and the block report.
Second it.
Motion's made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Barge for a second reading with the amendment of adding the block report and the official map. Any discussion on second reading with those three? Counselor Foster.
Just a very quick statement that if I lived in a perfect world, I would have more time to sit down and really look at this prior to a second reading. And I accept the world we have, and I'm very grateful for your expedient work to bring this to meet the deadlines that need to happen.
Yep, definitely noted. Okay, any other discussion on this second reading? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, that has now passed. Godspeed to it, and thank you again so much for all of that amazing work. Thank you. Bye. And we are now at the consent agenda, which I will read, then ask for any removals. We've got the minutes of October 7th, 2021. And we have, excuse me, that license to approve 21.328 application to amend license for storage of flammables and combustibles at 506 Pleasant Street. Any removals?
Move to approve the consent agenda, please.
Second it.
Motion made in second. Councilor Jarrett, did you have a removal?
Yeah, I'd like to remove 21.328.
Okay. So let's redo that motion.
Well, the motion stands with including removal. Minus the removal. I'm sorry.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded for the consent agenda minus the removal of the license. No discussion? Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Move to approve 21.328, please.
Second.
Motion's made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Jarrett. Okay, discussion. I see the gentlemen are back. Thank you. I know you've had to wait a long time. You now know more about Northampton than you ever possibly could have imagined you would. Counselor Jarrett, did you have discussion on this?
Yeah, I feel fine about approving this as is. I feel like it's not a major change, but given the attorney's, the city solicitor's viewpoint that we do have more discretion than we thought in granting these licenses, I thought it might be good to have a little bit of a discussion in terms of, that if this was an expansion, I think it would be worth talking about a question of whether there would be things we might ask for in exchange, or such as electric charging stations or such. But in this case, given that it's just a change of fuel type, I don't feel that's necessary, but thought it might be helpful to just sort of state that sort of concerns around the expansion of fossil fuel use, which this isn't.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that has passed. Thank you for joining us and for sticking with us. Moving on, we are going to recess for the Finance Committee. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Labarge,
Here.
Counselor Quinlan,
Here.
Counselor Shara,
Yeah, here, sorry.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Here.
Okay, our first item is approval of minutes from the previous meeting, which was October 7th, 2021.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I'm going to say that was Counselor Thorpe made the motion, Counselor Quinlan seconded it. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, those have been approved, and we have a presentation this evening. The Finance Director, Charlene Nardi, is joining us, and this is for our first quarter financial report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President and councilors. I believe you should have 4 reports. 2 are for revenue, the general fund and the enterprise funds, and 2 are for expenses for those same general fund and enterprise funds. They cover the first quarter, July 1st to September 30th. And I'm happy to report that revenues are on track with the budget. If I can draw your attention to the report that's labeled FY22 Revenue General Fund on page 1, you'll see that hotel motel revenue at $205,000 is vastly improved over last year's first quarter at the same time period, which was at the height of the pandemic. That is almost back to pre-pandemic levels. If you look at meals revenue, that is on track for the budget as well. It's not quite as good as hotel motel, but it is heading back towards the pre-pandemic levels. Marijuana revenue is the same as the last 5 quarters. The pandemic didn't really have an impact. And the good news is with the level the level revenue stream that we're having, and it's showing that Northampton is maintaining its market share, even as other communities are opening up businesses, or businesses are opening in their communities. If you look at page 2 and we look at parking revenues, collectively, the first quarter is at just under 359,000. That is much improved compared to just under $148,000 last year for the same time period. It's still not back to pre-pandemic levels. It's running about 100,000 behind. It is rebounding, just not as quickly as hotel, motel, and meals. I do expect, though, looking at it, that it will probably exceed our budget revenue projection. In that same grouping, if you look at ambulance services, that continues to be a significant source of revenue for us. It's at 28% of our budget. It is in line with the last 3 years at the same time period. If you look at parking tickets, which is page 4 of that report, that's in line to meet or exceed budget. It's almost back to pre-pandemic levels, although this line is less than the past years. Mostly because the city offers more opportunities, more ways to actually pay for parking with Parking Mobile now. You don't just have to do it with cash, you can do it with the Park Mobile app. So that is why it's slightly lower. So overall, general revenues are in sync with our budget projections, so that's good. It's still early in the year, but that's good news. If you look at enterprise funds revenue, that's the second revenue report. Water and sewer revenues are coming back. There's more revenue than there was the first quarter of last year, and that is closer to pre-pandemic levels. Stormwater revenue is the same. This revenue really wasn't impacted by COVID-19, and solid waste is in line with projected revenues as well. And then I'm not sure if you wanted to have questions on that, or you just want me to move right on to expenses.
Let's see, councilors, any questions before we go on to the expenditure side? They're all looking. Hey, Laura, we didn't do this yet. Is it possible to pull it up on the screen while we're doing this?
Sure.
Just so the public can follow along. I'm not seeing any questions or comments yet, Charlene, so I think maybe we can move on. Thanks.
So expenses, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, it's really early in the year. The things we look for are negative balances, things that just don't look in line with the budget, but everything's on target and expenses are occurring as expected. That is true for the general fund. Enterprise funds, again, tracking as expected. The percentages are generally low. If you look at them, like we're looking at, 25% of the year, but due to carryovers and forwards, due to ongoing projects, the indirects haven't been taken out. So you will see lower than 25% on most of those. And that's really, unless there's specific questions, there's not really a lot to say about expenses at this time.
I think I see some hands now. So Councilor Labarge?
Yes, Charlene, I have some concerns about the tax titles. How many tax titles do we have that are not up to date?
So which year are you referring to? So like if
as of last year.
For FY 2021?
Yeah.
So the audit is just being completed and we will have the list of the outstanding receivables as of 6/30 soon. I don't have those figures with me tonight.
And do we have any from the following year still?
So for FY 2020?
Yes.
There are outstanding receivables for that year, and Chris Bissell, our treasurer collector, has been dealing with those and putting them in tax title, taking out tax liens on them.
Right. I was just curious because of the COVID and so forth. People lost their jobs, and were we going to see a rise of this happening?
So there were, in the paper, there was a listing of FY 2020 outstanding taxes.
I didn't see that. When was that in there?
Tuesday. I'm not sure if that's an indication from COVID. 67 is still a small percentage of the city's parcels. But at this point, I don't think we've seen a huge outstanding balance that we can specifically attribute to COVID.
Thank you.
But I mean, I certainly can look into that more with Treasurer Collector Bissell.
Thank you.
Other Councilor Jarrett?
Thank you, Director Nardi. I noticed that some departments have much lower than 25% in expenses so far, like parking enforcement's at 16.7, public safety, communication center at 9. Do these have larger expenses that are expected later in the year?
So yeah, not all the budget expenses track quarterly, but I know like parking enforcement, we are gearing up, we're hiring more enforcement officers. So it depends which actual budget line you're looking at, but yes, it's really hard to look at expenses and really say on a quarterly basis. I think we look more, it's easier to look at them later in the year than early on.
Right. Okay. And then there's a few that are greater, like the Forbes and Lilly libraries and the IT department. Is that attributed to like, fees that they pay all at once for a fiscal year?
They can be. So Forbes and Lilly Library, those budgets never go over and they are paid differently than quarterly. So you'll see like, I believe, I don't have it right. I can find it. I think they're at like 33%. And that's how Lilly Library and the Forbes Library track, but they will not go over. They get exactly what was appropriated for them. It's just kind of parceled out to them in a different manner. Certainly looking at some budgets, you will have like, when you look at our insurance is based, one of them, we pay that entirely up front. So you'll look at those and you'll see 92% or 98% on those. So when you see those high percentages, and I've looked at it closely, and so do the department heads track their own budgets, those are usually the reasons for those. And if they aren't, then certainly we're having those conversations. But at this point, I don't see anything of concern.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Nardi? I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're on to the financial orders. We're at 21.342 in order to appropriate senior center gift fund money to the financial aid fund. Let me pull that up. So this is upon the recommendation of the mayor, ordered that up to $3,600 in fiscal year 2022 from the Northampton Senior Center Gift Fund be used to provide financial assistance to seniors to attend fee-based programs offered at the senior center, provided that each participating senior meet financial aid guidelines established by the Senior Services Director, and such assistance be limited to no more than $180 per person per year. Is there a motion?
Move a positive recommendation to the full city council.
Second.
Yep.
Motion's been made by Councilor Quinlan, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. There's also was a memo I hope people were able to see from the Senior Services Director that talked about this a little bit more. I could read it if people would like, but I see that Mayor Narkowitz is here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the memo is explanatory, and this is not the first time that the director has brought this up, has brought an order like this to City Council. This has been an ongoing priority of hers to try to make sure that we make senior services programming accessible to all incomes. And so this is essentially asking to use some of the general gift fund to the senior center to be able to essentially underwrite up to a certain level folks' ability to sign up for various programs at the senior center. So this is essentially asking for permission to expend those gift funds on this very specific and I would say very worthy purpose.
Okay, Councilor Labarge.
Yes, Mayor, is this new having not just the one tier, but the two tiers?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
My question, Mayor, is I see that it says 1 tier, then it goes into 2 tiers, which is really great that I'm seeing this. And I just want you to explain that, because tier A discounts at 200, what is it, 250%, poverty guidelines. For tier B discounts, having 2 tiers for qualifying will allow older adults who are struggling financially, but just miss the line for many programs they still need to access. So the reason why I'm asking that, because this is the first time, Mayor, I've seen the 1 tier, but the 2 tiers, I think this is great, because we're actually moving up on that tier and giving people the access to be able to have what other people are having.
I agree with you, and I can't remember if these 2 tiers were discussed previously, but obviously we're trying to mirror, as it says in the memo, the same guidelines we use for food assistance, and make sure we're following those same. So I agree with you. It's important that we, that we stretch as far as we can to try to make sure we get those our low-income seniors to be able to have access to whatever it is, health programs or exercise programs or trips or any of the other things that we make available to seniors.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions on this? Okay, seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
and Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with a positive recommendation, and we're at 21.343 in order to surplus city land for affordable housing in a community resilience hub off Crafts Avenue. This is upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narkowitz in Planning and Sustainability, whereas consistent with the Sustainable Northampton Comprehensive Plan, Open Space Recreation and Multi-Use Trail Plan, Housing Needs Assessment and Strategic Housing Plan, and Unlocking Opportunity and Assessment of Barriers to Fair Housing, the city has a comprehensive affordable housing program, including limited development, funding, regulatory incentives, and surplusing of city land. Whereas consistent with the Climate Resilience and Regeneration Plan, Community Resilience Building findings, and Mayor's Task Force on Panhandling, the city has a program to create a community resilience hub as a downtown facility with a coordinated program for frontline communities and any residents who face chronic and acute stress due to disasters, pandemics, climate change, and other social and economic challenges. It will serve the 1% homeless and those with severe chronic stress, and the 15% below the poverty line, and the 40% housing burdened and under chronic stress, and the 100% those at risk of acute adverse events, by providing access to resource and a social network and building social resilience. Whereas downtown studio apartments are especially important to help transition people who are experiencing houselessness or who face extreme housing burdens. Whereas the city has made offers for the Roundhouse and for St. John Candius Church and explored other options for a community resilience hub while exploring a backup option of developing a hub in a new building, potentially co-located with affordable housing. Whereas the city's property extending from the Pachowski Municipal Building, Office Building to the Roundhouse Bus Station driveway to Crafts Avenue to the southerly most parking spaces in the City Hall parking lot potentially is viable for affordable housing studios and or a community resilience hub. Ordered that City Council declares this land surplus to city needs. Further, that the mayor is authorized to transfer deeds, easements, and or leases for the land for affordable housing and or community resilience hub, subject to restrictions and conditions that the mayor imposes to accomplish these needs. Okay, is there a
Move a positive recommendation to the.
Could I, our council president, could I ask a question, please?
Can we just get, okay, so the motion's been.
I'm a little confused here because usually we recommend, like if we have the mayor here or whoever to speak first, what we're doing is we're recommending this right off the bat to full city council.
No, we're just making the motion. We read it and we make the motion and then we discuss.
Okay, well, that's not what I've been saying.
Okay, well, I just read it. So now we're putting it on the floor for discussion.
Thank you.
So I think the motion's been made and seconded. And
I'm happy to start speaking to it if you'd like.
please do.
Okay. So obviously we've had some discussion at past meetings about the city's efforts to identify a resilience hub, community resilience hub. And the order points out the 2 other locations. And we've been working with an architect to look at design considerations for retrofitting existing buildings. But one of the other things we wanted to look at in this process as a contingency was to actually look at, was there available city land where we could construct a building that could provide this asset, as well as the potential for also providing a supply of much needed SRO type housing, which we are desperately in need of in the city. And so that exploration led to, well, right outside our back door at City Hall. The fact that we had this parcel, the fact that obviously as a city, we've been talking a lot about, infill development and how we can maximize land and how we can create obviously housing systems that are closer to downtown. So this is an opportunity to basically take some land that we have that's not currently in use and be able to advance it for potentially the resilience hub. But even if it does not end up being the resilience hub, it could be, it could provide this important affordable housing in the heart of our downtown. So that's the proposal. I know the order talks about the Roundhouse. It also talks about St. John Cantius Church. Unfortunately, I can report that our offer on St. John Cantius has been formally rejected as of today in writing. So that is no longer an option. And again, the Roundhouse remains uncertain. So that's the basic framework here. And I believe Director Fiden is on the line. So I would have him. He's been working more closely on this and working with our architect to really look at what the feasibility and the possibilities are here, including even talking with some of our partners in the nonprofit development world about the potentials here as well. So I'll turn it over to Director Fiden for further details.
So the mayor gave a great summary. We've looked at the site behind City Hall. First, could it by itself be a resilience hub? And the cost would probably be too high because, digging into the hillside is quite expensive. And if you're just doing one use, it might be hard to justify that entire expense. So we're looking at either, as the mayor said, just for studio apartments, sort of the lowest cost housing in town, or studio apartments plus a hub, and putting them together both serves 2 important needs. And it lowers the cost. The cost of digging away dirt gets amortized over 2 different buildings. We've begun the due diligence. We are still a very long way from doing that. So even if council votes on this tonight, to be clear, this site may not go anywhere. But we're reluctant to want to spend a lot of money in due diligence until we know that council supports this approach. We are talking to Valley CDC. We might look at other partners as well, but we're talking to Valley CDC to make sure that the affordable housing scenario, either as just housing or housing in a hub, would work for them. And they've been very supportive. Again, they have due diligence to do. I think we'd still prefer an existing building, but as the mayor said, St. John Cantius is no longer a player, and the Roundhouse we just don't know about. So our goal, if council approves this, is to continue on due diligence on either path going forward. The hillside itself, where the steps are, has some structural problems. So if we don't do this work, at some point the city has to invest in the steps and or the retaining wall. And so there's certainly a benefit for sort of thinking about this now before we make an investment that maybe we won't need. There would be some loss of parking, not a lot, but the building inspector has 4 or 5 parking spaces, which we take over. They need parking. It's critical for them because they're in and out, but there's enough room in the nearby Roundhouse parking lot that we could just move them there. So, there's certainly costs for doing everything. Again, the cost of construction, both downtown and an area with a hillside, is more expensive. I mean, there's a reason why suburban locations get developed. So the cost per square foot would be higher here. But I also think downtown is where we desperately need the housing and desperately need the hub. And there's some savings. Housing downtown doesn't require parking the way it might in suburban locations. And I think it would get excitement in Boston doing this kind of project. So, affordable housing in Northampton, for example, tends to attract less money per unit than affordable housing in Boston for understandable reasons. Land's more expensive in Boston. But there's some opportunities, even though the cost is higher, to make a good story.
Thank you.
Could you just describe logistically for folks, just because they are seeing a rectangle on a map? I mean, we would envision that the entrance to this building would be, facing the roundhouse or the Roundhouse Plaza, correct? That would be
correct. So the entrance would be from Roundhouse Plaza, probably the first 2 stories. So if we did a combined use, the first 2 stories would be a resilience hub, and then you'd have 3 stories of housing on top of it. And the height of the building would be almost identical to the municipal office building. So we don't want this to tower over, but so it fits within that standpoint. If we did all housing, it would either be 4 or 5 stories, but more or less the same route. One of the reasons the resilience hub by itself was so expensive is when we looked at, we originally thought, wouldn't it be great to have one entrance off Crafts Avenue, by the bus terminal, and one entrance in the City Hall parking lot. But there were some inefficiencies because for the height to work, you have higher floor plates, higher distance between the ceiling and the floor, that just made the building more expensive. The way we're looking at now, we still need to do more due diligence. One approach is not even having an entrance from the City Hall parking lot, just have the entrance in the bottom, a shared entrance for housing and resilience hub. And the architects are looking at, does it make sense to have some entrance off of City Hall parking lot, if nothing else, maybe a fire escape entrance. So again, that detail is still being worked out.
Thank you for that. Councilor Labarge.
Thank you. Wayne, I want to thank you very much for spending some time talking with me about this project. I really appreciated that. That little side road there that you come in off of Cross Avenue and go into where the building inspectors, they have the 4 or 5 cars that park there. Is that going to be blocked off or what?
No, I don't think we envision doing it any different than it is now. That would stay the way it is. The city owns that land. Peter Pan Bus Terminal has an easement, has a right to use it.
Okay.
And we wouldn't block that. That's critical for bus moving. So basically, and the sidewalk in front of the building inspector's parking, that would be untouched as well. So basically where their parking lot begins is where the building would begin. And we'd still there would still in essence be an alleyway between this building and the municipal office building. Buildings for fire code, buildings have to be at least 10 feet apart from each other. So you don't have fires spreading from one to the other. So there'd be an alleyway, the building inspector, the municipal office building fire escape would remain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a great spot for it versus having it at the church. That's my feelings. I think this is right there. The transportation is perfect right there. And agencies, basically it's like ServiceNet, everybody is closer in that area. So I'm happy. I really like this plan. I think it's great. And what is the big problem with the Roundhouse? Is it environmental issues there?
Yeah, so the site was the site of a coal gasification plant. So the Roundhouse literally was an oil tank. And so when they were making product, what would happen is coal would come in, they would heat the coal, they'd catch the gas that came off the coal, and it was used for all the same things we use natural gas for now. And then the sludge would be disposed of. There were large sludge tanks in the park, and it was used for various things from roofing tar to toothpaste. So they sold the sludge, but a lot of it left in place.
Wow.
Columbia, what's now Eversource Gas, that used to be Bay State Gas, they spent about $7 million cleaning up the city's parking lot. The current parking lot replacement project is in part because they dug up the parking lot and they paid us for it. They spent some amount of money, we don't know the dollar amount, cleaning up the basement for the roundhouse. They spent a lot of effort removing product. As I say, probably between the two, at least $8 million cleaning it up. Some residual amounts remain. The testing that was done in the spring shows the amounts. So we're talking about very small amounts. We obviously don't want people to get cancer. So these things are measured in terms of likelihood of cancer per 100,000 people. So we're really talking about very minor risks, but there's some residual material left. I've been told, I'm not an expert in this area, that you would always want to test in January with the heating system going, because that's the biggest risk period. That's when you're pulling product from the basement, heating the air and distributing the air throughout the building. So the tests that have been done in the spring and summer are inconclusive. The last test that we're aware of was a higher concentration you could use for offices and could use for a resilience hub. They've done some work cleaning up since then. So we hope in testing in January that the site will be clean enough, but we just don't know that. And our option has expired. As far as we know, they've had no other offers. So we believe that we'll still be able to get the same deal we had before, but there's no guarantee. So we're basically continuing to look at, we've been very honest with Mr. Kern, who owns the building, that if we get the same price we had before and if the site's clean, we would love to buy it. But without an option, we need to keep looking at other places.
Thank you very much, Wayne.
I just want to also add, this is, obviously the Resilience Hub has been a need that we've identified and have been working diligently on. And there's a separate planning group that's working on the actual programming. But really the SRO piece, the single occupancy housing is really also a critical gap that we have in the city. And we have people, during the pandemic, we were finding that we have a whole subset of folks who can't, for whatever reason, congregate housing is not an option. And so we've worked to try to get them into this type of housing. It's been mostly hotels in Holyoke and Springfield. But I think what we've really learned from the pandemic is that, for a lot of people, the way to move them into permanent housing is to get them into this type of a single residence type housing. Hotels are obviously super duper expensive and, have lots of other challenges, aren't set up for, really long-term living. But I was on a call this morning with a bunch of officials from DHCD. It was mayors throughout the region. It was town managers throughout the region. And, the message for them really was that, we need the state to really help us create more of these units and much faster. Now, with a typical affordable housing project, you're applying to the state through their self-help rounds. And, a lot of the projects that we've celebrated on Pleasant Street, those have taken sometimes 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 rounds of applications to finally secure the funding. So the big message to the folks in Boston was, if we're going to solve this crisis and we're going to, if we don't want to have people, sleeping rough on our streets and living in tent encampments, and we have, congregate shelters that are full, we need to be able to get these types of units. So I love the fact that Northampton will be literally putting its money and its land where its mouth is, and we're going to try to solve the problem. Obviously, incrementally in terms of the number of units we'll create, but to be able to create the Resilience Hub and have this possibility of housing that people could move out of homelessness and transition into, that we'd be, part of helping to create. I just think it's an important statement for us to be making as a city. So I really hope that the council will support this. Again, we don't know for sure where it will go, and we don't know, there's a lot of due diligence to do. And so, but having this vote to at least know the council would be open to surplusing the land for this purpose, I think would be really important for us to really put more resources toward the project. And I use the term "we" loosely because obviously I won't be here for whatever the next phases are, but we've already spent some of our grant funds to do some of the initial architectural work, but there will need to be much more due diligence done on the site. So that's why I think this is an important next step to bring this to you and to get a vote of the council.
Thank you, Mayor Narkowitz. I agree. This is an important statement for us to be making. And I like that we're thinking creatively about other options for for the resilience hub if the roundhouse doesn't work out, and but that we're still very focused on the center of downtown for it. But to your last point, the importance of creating these smaller units, these single room units, is incredibly important for us. So I'm very appreciative of this idea and what's being suggested here. Councilors? Anyone have Councilor Nash, then Councilor Foster?
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate the urgency, that the mayor and the planning office are not sitting around and waiting. We're looking for sites to have our resilience hub open up, and I'm very excited about this idea of the SRO housing downtown as well. I think this is like all hands on deck. All ideas are good. This is exciting way to approach things. So thank you.
Councilor Foster?
Mostly just a big echo to what's been said. I really appreciate the creative thinking here, the focus on moving the Resilience Hub forward on addressing houselessness, all of these ideals that we as a city have said we embrace. And Mayor, to your comment, it was what I was thinking while Director Fiden was explaining or describing the plans, but there's a symbolism to city government saying, yes, in my backyard right here. And I appreciate and value that. And I think that this project, wherever it ended up, or this proposal is one I support, but I extra appreciate the location.
Well said, as always. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none. Roll call, please, Laura, on a positive recommendation.
And who is the second on the original? I have Councillor Quinlan as being the motion maker for the positive recommendation.
I don't recall.
It was Councilor Labarge, actually.
Councilor Labarge.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with a positive recommendation, and we are at the end of the finance agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
This is
Second.
made by Councilor Thorpe, seconded by Councilor Quinlan. Laura, roll call, please, on adjourning finance.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, we are out of finance and back in the full council where we are going to take up these financial orders. We are at 21.342 in order to appropriate senior center gift fund money to financial aid fund on first reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motions made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm missing Councilor Maori, but seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. We're at 21.343 in order to surplus city land for affordable housing in a community resilience hub off Crafts Avenue.
Move approval, please.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Any discussion on first reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. We're on to financial orders on second reading, 21.329. An order authorizing gift acceptance and expenditure on Academy of Music restroom expansion and renovation.
Move approval, please.
Second.
Motion was made by Counselor Dwight. I didn't get who the second was. Counselor
I
Maori?
seconded.
Okay, Counselor Maori was the second. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading, and we're at 21.333. In order to appropriate $15,000 in CPA funds to Hampshire and Hamden Canal Historical Documentation Project.
Move to approve.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Dwight. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster.
What is that?
What's happening?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
sorry. That's just my phone made noises. Sorry.
Counselor
musical
Jarrett
Interlude.
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that passes on second reading, and we're at orders on second reading, 21.331, the warrant for the November 2nd, 2021 biennial municipal election. This is on second reading. It passed in first reading. This has revised language, thanks to a very good catch by Counselor Jarrett. The revised language is to add the question, the ballot question about the municipal light plant. So I want to note that this is revised.
Move approval to the revised version.
Second.
Motion is made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Jarrett, I believe. Counselor Nash, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say ditto on the catch by Counselor Jarrett. It was just like, wow, really well done.
We definitely want that on there. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for those eagle eyes and eagle mind.
Evil mind.
It's been a long week, people. It's been a long week. You know what I mean. I don't mean you have a bird brain. That's not.
Whoa.
It was very good, quick thinking. Anyway, any other discussion? Okay. Seeing no other discussion, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading, and we are down to ordinances. 21.325, an ordinance relative to compensation for elected officials. This is on second reading.
Move approval.
Second it.
Which is made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Labarge. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading, and we are at an ordinance relative to ward and precinct boundaries for the city of Northampton. So this is where we have a choice to either delete chapter 33, section 1, which is what the solicitor's recommendation has been, because this does not need to be legislation. And or we can not take his opinion and we can vote on an ordinance, but then we would have to delete that ordinance and replace it with the boundaries that we have talked about earlier this evening. So there are two ordinances that have been attached. I guess I would ask for a motion to delete ward and precinct boundaries from the code, and then we can have a discussion about that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Jarrett. Okay. Discussion on how the council would like to proceed. Everyone, Counselor Jarrett.
If we were to delete this, where would it be found? Because I know when I was learning about wards and precincts and such, I looked up in the code book and I found, oh, here's where they're defined in addition to the map. So would this be easily, accessible on the city clerk's webpage? Or, I mean, maybe that's beyond. That's my only concern is to make sure that it is still easily found.
It's a good question. So Pam, would you like to come back on for a moment or no? Yes?
Yep, just sent you a message. I will definitely, I had thought about that already myself because, as you mentioned, it's really easy to find it in the code book. The census map that was approved 10 years ago is on the planning board's, the planning office of planning and sustainability website. So I think if you decide to delete it from the code book, I would put the description of the boundaries on the city clerk's website, and that's where it would live.
Thank you. Counselor Dwight.
So Pam, I mean, once we do establish this as the revised version as ordinance, it goes into E-code in that form, correct? But it doesn't include the map. Is that what happens?
Right. I don't believe that the code company has the ability to keep track of that map.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to say that the reason why it went into the code book in the first place was as a placeholder so that we would, know we would have it readily available. I mean, and back then we weren't using, the website a lot to display a lot of information, but this, this is something that certainly could be kept on our website. And I know that I refer to it, infrequently, but I do refer to it from time to time, especially, because it defines the election boundaries and that sort of thing. So, it's completely your call where you want it to live. Yep, the city council's call.
Well, if we reestablished a revised ordinance, or if later it became an ordinance, then it would automatically go into E-code, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. Yep. Yeah, if you wanted to bring it back later as an ordinance, absolutely. Yep. We could do that.
Thank
you. Other questions, discussion? Okay. Seeing none, Roll call, please, Laura, on an ordinance to delete the ward and precinct boundaries from the code.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. I just want to, the rest of the title actually was on the following page and I didn't see it, so I just want to read the whole. So it's an ordinance to delete ward and precinct boundaries from the code book and maintained by council order. Just so everyone knows, that was that full title of that ordinance. Okay, moving on. We are at 21.313, an ordinance to amend the zoning maps, section 350-3.4 at Chapel Street. This is on second reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Labarge. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. That passes on second reading, and I believe we've reached the end of our agenda.
Move to adjourn, please.
Second.
Which is made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Roll call, please, Laura, on adjourning.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.